It's Spoilerin time, a fantastic show made possible by Cordkillers and part of the Cordkillers cinematic universe. Yes, on Cordkillers, we talk about how to watch stuff. Then we watch it and talk about it right here. This week on Spoilerin time, we'll be talking about Extras, episode 1 of season 2. Bryce and I will be discussing Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs Shaw, and we'll all talk about the first 2 episodes of the brand new season of Preacher. I'm Tom Merritt, and joining me, of course, my best friend in the Spoilerin world, Brian Brushwood.
Yeah, well, I mean, my other best friend is the results of the movie draft. I kept it going right up until the drop. That's professionalism right there, people.
You're a pro.
Man, you're like a DJ.
All right, you continue to rack up all of the money on the planet. The Lion King did better than I, in a million years, expected. Continues to do better despite tepid reviews.
Did Sword and Laser break $1 billion last week?
They just broke $1 billion this week.
Wow.
So their only real threat right now is Team John Trekker, who is still waiting on It Chapter 2. Now, here's the question, is some people are saying the runtime of It Chapter 2 being 2 hours and like 40 minutes or so would reduce the number of showings and possibly affect the box office. I feel like that longer runtime is an indicator of the quality and their confidence in the product. We know that It Chapter 1 did in its entire run right around $300 million.
290 something.
290, right? Yeah. It Chapter 2 has much more star power and all of the direction power. And if they're making it that long, I feel like that's all an indicator that they really expect it to do well. Are you feeling threatened at all, Tom?
Well, Brett Rounceville, that was a really good defense of It Chapter 2.
I'm sorry, I've got a phone call from my stockbroker. He says that I'm getting another transfer from Brett Rounceville. Give me a moment.
Sure. No, you've earned every penny of it, Brian. I don't think that the runtime of It Chapter 2 is going to factor in. That feels like slicing and dicing data way too closely. I don't think there's any, Avengers Endgame seemed to do pretty great with a really long runtime. So I don't think those sorts of things end up mattering. I do think it's hard for a sequel to do better than its first one unless it is an outlier. And I don't see any indication that It Chapter 2 is going to be that outlier of like, oh my gosh, if you thought the first one was good, it's so amazing. Could be wrong. We might start hearing that buzz soon. But if it makes exactly the same as It Chapter 1, Lion King needs to make $109 million in the next 8 weeks,
which is not at all impossible.
I think it's not a given, but I think that's quite achievable. So I am still feeling good about my prediction that Team Sword and Laser on the backs of lions will win this movie draft.
I gotta tell you, I feel like from what I understand of the It story, I think It Chapter 2 might stand alone. Like, I'm not sure what you need to know about the first part of it. It's like...
It's not about that. It's about people, like, the first one is like, ooh, It. A new take on It. The second one is, oh, another take on It.
Well, no. But the second one is, what if the first one had massive star power and momentum and good buzz? And what if you didn't need to see the first part? Like, all you need to know going into It Chapter 2 is, they beat a thing when they were a kid. Now they're adults. They got to beat it again.
But that's for people who care. We're to make up the margins and make more than the last one means you got to get people who are like, I wasn't that into the first It, but this one sounds great.
I to be honest, that's me. Like I saw, like, they're marketing this really heavy. I saw the trailer before the Gator mashing movie.
Did you see It Chapter 1 though?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right.
I saw the TV show back in the day, but I think I will go see this one.
The point here is, don't be like Brian.
You're not wrong. That's universally good advice. But my point is, I think that if I could offer a side wager, I fairly strongly suspect that It Chapter 2 will do better than It Chapter 1, which I know is counter to most trends, but I think it will.
Well, I mean, what I said was It Chapter 2 would have to be an outlier, and you're saying, I think it's
going to be an outlier.
Right?
Yeah, I do. For this story and for the quality of storytelling that they're doing.
I don't think it is, because it's horror and I don't think enough of the wider audience cares, but you make a compelling case for it. I can't say you're flat out wrong.
Have you seen that trailer? Because they do something that I'm not seeing very often. They carve out a just standalone 90-second vignette, and they just run it as like, you digging this? Pretty weird, right? Watch it. You watch 90 seconds of this thing, and then it's revealed like, oh, by the way, this is a chunk of the movie It.
By the way, it is true, though, that if It Chapter 2 does end up propelling Team John Trekker into first place, I will be filing a protest with the commissioner's office for the very unusual situation of having such a big gap between the last two movies.
We will take that into consideration.
And I suspect
hold on. As we all know, the opinions of the commissioner are unassailable, and they are beyond reproach.
I mean, all I know is money from Brett Rounceville's account goes into the commissioner's account.
Oh, hold on. Is this the controversy? Wow. Is that Brett Rounceville makes monthly payments to the commissioner?
I have it on good authority that this happens. Hey, we should also mention that Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs Shaw won the weekend last weekend for Team Hammerson, $60 million. And so that propelled Team Hammerson up to $344 million. So, hey, Costco Hammerson certainly didn't pile up the hits the way they expected. But
I was about to say, for as heavily as that was marketed, that's a little bit lighter than I had expected.
I have no idea. The coverage of it seems to be saying like it did great. So I guess that's what people expected. But yeah, 60 million isn't 100 million for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we got a bit of triage to do first before we get into the spoilering. Steve S. wrote, loved, adored, doted on your spoiler in time today as you covered Tarantino and The Boys, which itself sounds like a movie title in it. Just wanted to say, I hope you lads either have read or intend to read the original comic book series now the show is out.
I don't know. My guess is maybe I'll read it after the second season or whatever, but for right now, I'm really digging what I'm experiencing so far from The Boys. But yeah. I put this in triage because I have to amend my take on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because the longer and the farther in the past it is, the happier I am with the memories that I have of it. It was, to be clear, it was an abject misery to sit through that boring, self-indulgent cinema fest for 80%. But now that it's over with, I go back and I think like, that was kind of cool when Brad Pitt parkoured to the top of the roof and then, had a holster with his beer in it and reminded me of my cousin Jess, I don't know. My overall review was positive, but now that I'm more distant from it, it's even more positive.
The pain of that childbirth recedes and you just love the child.
Yes. That's a very good way to put it. That's 100% correct.
Yeah. I will treat you to the Tarantino margarita at Casa Vega next time you're in town.
Done. And I will toast the fact that it wins best picture. Mark it down in your logbooks.
Right. Lead pipe lock prediction from Brian Brushwood.
Yep.
All right. Let's start off by talking about Preacher episodes 1 and 2 of season 3, I think.
4.
Right?
Season 4.
Season 4. Sorry. I've lost track. What'd you think, Brian?
Hey, Tom. First of all, let me tell you 2 facts that there can be no dispute about. Number 1, Preacher is the best show on television. There is nothing it could do possibly wrong, and everything it's done is always right. Second fact, why did they show the first 2 episodes back to back? Because the first episode was great, and the second episode was kind of garbage. Also, don't believe me when I say it's garbage, because obviously then that would imply that anything is not perfect about Preacher, and we all know that's not true.
Which we all know is not that by definition, because it's called Preacher and is Preacher, it can't be true. How do I say this? I was never surprised, and I laughed out loud once.
Yeah. Okay. So first episode,
and this is I'm treading carefully, not just because it's Preacher, but because I didn't have a bad time. I wasn't checking my watch going, oh my gosh, what is wrong with Preacher? It's gone to the dogs. But I noticed 20 minutes into the first episode, I'm like, I'm not really like, usually I'm guffawing or like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about that scene. It may be a victim of its own success. Every crazy thing they did, I'm like, yep, that's what they do in Preacher, right?
No, but they've managed to outdo themselves before, and they chose in the first 2 episodes to not outdo anything that they've done before, right? And in fact, that's what I'm honing in on.
Yeah.
They walked a lot of stuff back, and I understand, like you end on a high note with one season. I understand you got to walk back or reset the rules or set a new MacGuffin as the goal. I get all of that, but what do you do when they don't really do any of that, and instead you're just like, oh, we're just dialing back everything, and then they rescue Cassidy, and Cassidy's like, no thanks, I'm gonna do an emotional, middle finger stand, and it's not even gonna pay off in the second episode
immediately, so that I can do the stand, and then get caught again, and I still love Cassidy's been my favorite character, and I still loved Cassidy. I still love Tulip. I still love Preacher. I still loved Julianne Emery and the whole Grail Society. Like, the characters were still working for me. What they were doing wasn't propelling me into the elevated sense of enjoyment I usually get.
The only significant surprise we had, and forgive me if I should have remembered this from last season, but Hair Star hanging out with God was a bit of a surprise. Them having a heavy integration with Diet Dr. Pepper was a bit of a surprise.
That was funny. Yeah.
And that's about it.
Well, the opening bit with the dinosaur eating the poop, I was like, okay, yeah. So don't eat the hen. Now it's going to eat the poop. All right. Like, I'm sure we're going to come back to that later in the season.
To be honest, my favorite parts were in the credit sequence, realizing who was getting top billing, finding out who we definitely are going to get to hang out with for the rest of the season.
Noah Taylor is coming back.
Like Arsface and Hitler and
even what's his Humperdinck?
Yes. Well,
got billing.
We only saw a little bit of them, but again, that's good foreshadowing that I was excited about. Same with the chick that looks like Maude from The Big Lebowski. All of that. Okay, in general, the credits should not be the most exciting part of the episode, and the credits were definitely the most exciting parts of the episodes.
Both episodes, really. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're right. It picked up more in the second episode when we finally hit the road. My biggest problem with the first episode was that we were just in that building. We're in that location the whole time. Seeing Preacher hit the road, I at least got some movement and an interesting outside character, and that started to feel a little bit better. But
that's so interesting, because I thought the reverse. I thought the first episode was stronger because it made sense and I believed it. I didn't believe 1 second of, he's on a plane going to Australia.
There were also some weird cuts in the second episode.
Well, the first episode begins with that future take of Cassidy and Tulip.
I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. You're right. There is the sort of remember these things. I was a little bit like, oh man, this feels like homework. Okay, I gotta remember these things. But the second episode, we had some weird cuts, like where Tulip shoots a missile at the Citadel, and then it didn't seem to really tie into anything else.
Yeah, now that you mention it. But it's tough because the show has done such a good job of training us that even absent Genesis, there's something, and absent the vampire powers of Cassidy, there's still superhero rules that apply to Tulip and to Jesse, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a result, I didn't feel any stakes during any of that. And that can be fun when you see people smack talking each other, knowing that, they're all invulnerable. But it just felt impotent in these first 2 episodes.
Yeah, and let's be honest, it's still Preacher, and we're not giving up on it.
Oh goodness, no. It's the best show on television. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's just faking us out until it gets good.
Little bit of head fake. We did get one scene with Arseface too. which seemed weird. Like it seemed out of place that we got that one scene. I'm like, oh, we're going to start getting a B story from them. Nope. What
was that scene now that I think about it?
You see the what's his name? The god of, oh shoot. The guy who's after Preacher.
The saint of kicking his ass.
Saint of Killers.
Yeah, Saint of Killers.
We see him and Arseface show up at the Louisiana house
at the previous set piece.
Say,
and be all
I guess
like,
he's not here.
Oh, I guess it's next season.
Yeah, we'll head.
Let's get in the car and drive to season 4.
Let's drive our Illinois plated car to the Middle East.
God, you're so right. I think that I would have really enjoyed, and I'm sure that's what they'll deliver next week or whatever. But this whole thing was very circular. I didn't like us busting through only to reset the clock and go back to the beginning. Nothing's progressing. Not the strongest opening. I think they should have just shown the first episode, and if anything, done like an episode 2 and 3 back to back.
Now, if I had come into Preacher with different expectations, there's a lot to like in this episode. It really is all about the expectations I brought in for what kind of story I expect to get from it.
Yeah.
Anything else about Preacher?
No, and I'm sad that there's not much else.
Well, I said that last little bit because I had expectations going into Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, which were that I would see quippy one-liners, blowing up things, fight scenes, and that's exactly what I got every minute of that movie, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Bryce, what did you think?
So are you like a big Fast and the Furious
nope
fan?
I've seen the first movie and that's it.
I don't, maybe it was because, so I went and saw it at the Alamo Draft House here, and they do all the pre-show stuff, and I think the pre-show really set me up with really high expectations, because I think the pre-show thing was all the big stunts, driving out of one car into another car,
all of the greatest hits from the previous movies.
Yeah, and I felt like it didn't have the same big nail biting moments. I guess the big multi-car chain at the end of the movie is close. The big the scene in London when they're driving under the two big trucks. Mm-hmm. I think that actually got me to yell out in the theater, and I thought someone would get mad at me. But otherwise, it's very fighting focused, and I guess it makes sense with The Rock. But I thought it was fine. I don't know. I kind of thought if you were an action fan,
I didn't see the movie, but I felt like the whole Fast and Furious Presents was kind of an implicit explanation of don't expect car chase stuff. We are presenting this person and other person. You know, it was,
right. And I think that's exactly right. This movie was, we want to show Jason Statham and The Rock do a bunch of fight scenes, but we're going to use their Fast and Furious characters to tell that story. So we can't call it Fast and Furious 12, 15 or otherwise. So we'll spin it off into kind of a goofy James Bond, basically, where, the CIA and GCHQ hire Statham and The Rock, Hobbs and Shaw, to go off book and find, it's Shaw's sister. Well, that's interesting. And now we have 3 people that are trying to escape both the government and the bad guys. I knew that was going to be the plot. I didn't care. I came for the quips and the fights, and they were fun and hilarious. And it was, it was the same way I feel about Pacific Rim. I went there for big robots beating up on each other, and that's what I got. Here, I went to see Hobbs and Shaw, be snarky and funny and do crazy stunts, and that's exactly what I got.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, I did not see the movie, but I did see the 3 different previews that they released with 9 different set pieces in there. Can I describe the movie as somebody who has not seen it, and you can fill in all the blanks or tell me what I got wrong?
Sure.
Okay, so opening segment, Idris Elba steals a Jeep Jop and does a thing, and suddenly gets the skills.
Already wrong.
Well, close enough.
It's Shaw's sister.
The woman steals
steals the thing.
for him, I'm assuming, right?
No.
Oh, he
and
frames
Idris
her.
Elba is mad that she took it when he wanted it, and now he's after her.
Okay, but so he takes the MacGuffin and has the Tesseract and injects it into his blood, and then he's like, "I'm awesome." No,
She did that.
No, she injects
That's how
it
she
into
stole
her
it.
blood in order
Yeah.
to hide it. From
well,
him.
how do we get to the scene where he announces he's Black Superman?
He already is.
Because he's a robot. That's the thing that maybe they don't have in the trailer.
What?
He's a android. Because he died. He died in a previous movie. He was
they
shot in the head.
reconstructed him from what was left of his dead body,
All right,
and
I've
turned
already
him into
lost
a-
interest in this movie. Fine.
I will say,
No, because you're looking for story, Brian. There's no story here.
actually, I thought all the character interactions were good. I mean, the story is what it is, like plot holes aside.
Yeah.
I thought like the interactions were great. Statham and his sister, The Rock and his like.
I love that they go to Samoa and decide that, oh, you know what? The family that is mad at me for leaving is the only ones I can rely on to beat Black Superman with our traditional Samoan weapons.
I thought that was maybe a little. I thought that was reaching a little bit. Like,
Oh, no, it was totally reaching a level. I'm like, all right, show me how this works.
we
you
have
know?
no guns.
Popcorn,
They're coming
popcorn.
armed to the teeth, but we can turn off their smart guns for 6
That's
minutes. A very weird one, but yeah, all the character stuff was great. I don't know why I'm asking this to the world. Is Ryan Reynolds a character in the Fast and the Furious franchise?
No.
Okay, because
Ryan Reynolds
he was
and
a
Kevin
surprise.
Hart have surprise cameos. That's the one thing you don't see in the trailer, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that Ryan Reynolds and Kevin Hart are going to be in this movie. Ryan Reynolds plays the CIA contact for Dwayne Johnson, and his scenes are hilarious as any Ryan Reynolds scenes ever are. And Kevin Hart plays an air marshal who kind of figures out that Hobbs and Shaw are on this flight, but instead of arresting them, which is his duty because they're on the run from the law, he asks them if he can help them because he wants to be part of the CIA and not have to be an air marshal anymore.
He's great. That entire scene is very good. When he
And they're
starts,
both hilarious. Kevin Hart's
and then
hilarious.
starts talking like this, and so he's.
And then he explains
he's a
how he
big macho
became
man.
Detective Pikachu and
Not Kevin Hart, no.
No.
Oh.
Kevin Hart, yeah.
no, he explains how he did security at the mall.
Classic.
Yeah. And what did you think about how they end? I mean, look, the story is whatever. But they definitely really want to make a Hobbs and Shaw too, don't they?
Ryan Reynolds and Kevin Hart are under contract for future Hobbs and Shaw verse movies that would continue to be side movies to the Fast and Furious franchise.
Yeah. Well, then we can get the Ryan Reynolds and Kevin Hart spinoff. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw presents Reynolds and Hart.
Yeah. This movie is not for everyone. I could tell by looking. It's not for Brian. It might have not been for Bryce. But
yeah.
I got everything.
I don't know. When I like the rating for me of an action movie is, how like on the edge of my seat I am. And I felt really comfortable watching Hobbs and Shaw. So
Yeah.
I think that was
one of the things I loved about it.
Oh, really?
I didn't have to be tense ever. It was very relaxing. Because
Very put that on the Hobbs and Shaw poster. Very relaxing. Tom
you'll pay
Merritt.
for the seat and you'll use it all.
if you don't want tension in your movie, check out Hobbs and Shaw. No, but there's something appealing about that to me sometimes when I'm like, yeah, I don't want to have to worry about these characters. I just want them to, do stunts. It's like seeing an aerial show at the circus.
Yeah. Okay. Here, my last thing on the movie. Tom, Ryan Reynolds is definitely the disguised voice guy, right?
Okay, no, I really thought so too.
It sounds at the end you definitely can hear it, I feel like.
And at the end, they make a point of being like, we're gonna show you, here's Ryan Reynolds, and he's in his thing, and then they didn't reveal it. I was so mad. I was like, you might as well reveal it. And then I find out that people are doing all this decoding and stuff, and they're like, no, it's not Ryan Reynolds, it's somebody else. Can't remember who the leading theory is, but they didn't ever reveal it. I guess they're holding it for a future Hobbs and Shaw.
Weird.
But it apparently is not Ryan Reynolds, which I was very disappointed to hear about.
Did you stay and watch what I am told is 4 end credit scenes? Because
yes.
I walked out as the first one started and watched it and then left thinking they can't possibly have any more.
The ones that are immediate aren't bad. They're just kind of funny, kind of wrapping up the story with his daughter and stuff. The one that's at the very end after the credits should have been earlier. Like it's not worth.
Do you mind
around.
just?
It's Ryan Reynolds in a room talking to The Rock on the phone.
Wait, no, that's the second.
It's still.
It's more of that.
It's more.
Oh, geez. Okay,
yeah.
That's
which is why I'm like, oh, here we go. Here's where we find out he's the no.
Oh, okay. Well, Hobbs and Shaw, everybody.
Hobbs and Shaw, Shaw and Hobbs, however you say it, you'll love it. All right, let's talk about extras. Orlando Bloom. I want to be honest, you guys. I think this might have been one of my favorites.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because this is now, I only watched the first season previously, so now we're both experiencing this for the first time. I loved the fact that we had Orlando Bloom taking his own piss and playing a parody of himself. I love the fact that the story really broke apart, and that we watched and that we're seeing, you know, this interesting, fascinating discussion about like, what does it mean to be successful and what are you willing to do to get there? It got really, it was fun before, but this is the first episode where I thought this series is good.
Yeah, the Ricky Gervais storyline was substantive, right? Like it started to be an analog for what he might have gone through putting The Office together without being heavy-handed and being like, oh, and it's very obviously The Office, which it's not.
Right.
But sort of dealing with like, these are the kinds of issues you're going to have when you put a television show together. And I felt like that was really strong and enjoyable to see and to watch. Whereas the bits with Maggie, I love that they just immediately turn on the head. The formula of season 1 was Maggie trying to get a guy. Whether it was the star or not didn't matter, but Maggie trying to get a guy. And this time it's Orlando Bloom trying to get Maggie.
Well, and responding,
at least admit that he's attractive. If not, you know, maybe not get her as in date her, but like just it reverted. And Maggie very believably being like, yeah, I just don't.
Well, and what's funny is the exact same, the beauty of it is that it's the exact same character trait that was a problem all through season 1 becomes what drives Orlando Bloom crazy in this episode. You know, chasing her down is like, she's just honest and, you know, tells it like she sees it without any guile or whatever. And they set that up right at the beginning. Even if you've never seen the show before, she calls Ricky Gervais and Ricky Gervais is telling her, you know, hey, you're supposed to come see the show tonight. You're like, oh, am I? You know, like just totally vacant and everything. So it was totally believable. It was great. And especially when she's got that friend who's constantly negging her, but you know, she doesn't even see any of it because she's so oblivious.
Well, I think she gets that her friend is not being kind and is like, I wish she would just go away. She's making me feel bad. But it's just beautiful the way she doesn't really care about impressing her enough to try to fake something with Orlando Bloom, to the point that Orlando Bloom just comes up and plants a kiss on her right in front of that friend, which is the perfect send up for that situation. So
no, it's great.
I laughed out loud many times during this episode.
Agreed. Unlike a preacher. Take that, preacher. No, it's great. In fact, I would say maybe the most balanced and best story episode we've seen so far.
I mean, it's hard to put this up against Patrick Stewart, but
that was novel and fun. But this is balanced. Patrick Stewart
was great performing as that version of Patrick Stewart, but I think the Orlando Bloom storyline was stronger.
Yep. I think it's great. Also, I like that we're seeing so much more Stephen Merchant. Stephen Merchant really is playing essentially what I think became the Michael Scott character in the US version of The Office. He's just so weak. He immediately takes credit for whatever sounds good and then immediately drops it afterwards.
Yeah, no, you're right. I hadn't even thought about that. That is totally the Michael Scott trait.
Yeah.
You're correct. Any other thoughts on extras?
No, it's great. Everyone should keep watching. But just to check in, you don't mind that we took this off ramp on the Ricky Gervais highway?
No, you know what? I was not excited about more Ricky Gervais after The Office, and I'm glad I didn't get more Ricky Gervais from The Office. I got an entirely different Ricky Gervais that is very enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Good call, Brian. I should never doubt you.
Well, okay, let's not go overboard.
About television shows. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cordkillers. And thanks for spending your time with us. We appreciate it. We'll spoil you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.